Hiring your first employee is exciting, but it can also be a little terrifying. Are you doing everything legally? What are all these forms you need to fill out? And how do I actually pay them? Trust me, you're not alone, and today I'm gonna make things way easier. Hi everyone, Jamie Trull here, your favorite CPA and financial educator. And on this channel, I bring you all the topics that keep you informed, organized, and profitable in your business finances. So if you're interested in that, make sure to subscribe below. Now, if you're bringing someone onto your team for the very first time, you are in the right place. In this video, I'm going to walk you through step by step what you need to do to hire someone legally and to make sure that you don't miss a step. And stick around because I'm going to tell you about what I believe to be the most important step in hiring a new employee that many employers miss. So don't miss that at the end. So let's get into step one, which is to make sure that you are properly classifying your new hire. Now, the reason that this is step one is because the onboarding is completely different whether you are hiring a true employee, i.e. a W-2 employee, or whether you're hiring an independent contractor, also called a 1099 contractor. Now, I've said it before, but please don't call someone a 1099 employee because there is actually no such thing. You can either be an independent contractor who gets a 1099 or an employee who gets a W-2. Those are the two options. And the big reason this matters is because this will tell you what your legal and tax obligations are for that person that you are hiring. And they are completely different depending on which of those routes you go. Now, you've probably heard employees are going to come with more legal and tax requirements, i.e. compliance requirements that you need to keep up with. However, that doesn't mean that you pick your new hire's classification based on what is going to be cheaper and easier. Both the IRS and the state and federal departments of labor have strict rules for how workers are classified, and if you don't do it right, that could mean big penalties. So how do you tell the difference? Well, in general, one of the biggest ways to tell the difference is whether you're directing the work that they do. So if you are hiring someone and you are basically telling them what they need to do, providing them all the tools to do it, maybe there are specific work hours that you are dictating to them, that more than likely is going to fall under the classification of an employee. However, if you hire someone that maybe has other clients, they are running their own business, they're sending you invoices, they're providing a lot of the things they need to be able to work, then there's a better case for them being a 1099 contractor. Now, federal labor laws are a little less strict than, say, some state labor laws. So if you're in a state like California that has strict labor laws, then more than likely, most of the people that you hire are probably going to be employees. But make sure to check your state for additional guidelines on that. Now, if you're looking for help in making this determination, there is a tool I have linked below that OnPay created, and you can go check that out to determine if it's more likely that the person you're hiring is an employee or a contractor. So now that we figured that out, let's go on to step two, and that is to get set up legally. Now, if you went through step one and realized that the person you're hiring is actually a contractor, congratulations to you. You have a lot less you need to do. In fact, the only main thing that you're going to need to do is to likely send them a 1099 at the end of the year, depending on how you pay them. I have some other resources that talk a little bit more about the requirements for sending someone a 1099. But if you're hiring somebody as an employee, congratulations, you get to stick around for the rest of this video because we're largely going to focus on the things that you now need to do to be able to properly pay them. So there are a few things that you should do before you officially hire them. And that's to make it such that you can actually meet the legal requirements and get everything set up with the state as necessary. So first things first, if you don't have an EIN, which is an employer identification number, you can go ahead and grab one of those. They are free on the IRS website. Please don't pay for this. Make sure that you go directly to the IRS website, and it is a .gov, and it should be free and take just a couple of minutes. The next thing you're going to do is look up your state's workers' compensation laws. Now, they vary by state, as you'll see with the payroll process in general. There can be a lot of differences depending on where you are hiring that employee, i.e. where they will be performing the work, which may or may not be also the same state you live in. And so you're going to want to pay attention to those state laws that exist where they work. Now, when it comes to workers' compensation, sometimes you won't have to pay for this until you have at least 5 employees. Sometimes you have to pay for this for your first employee. It really just depends on the state. And additionally, some states even require workers' compensation if you are employing somebody who is home-based, which feels a little crazy, but I guess that's how it works. I suppose that covers if they fall down their own stairs on the way to their home office. And the other thing that you'll want to do is determine if you need to register with the state labor department and or the state revenue department. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more into the video, and I'll go over exactly how to make sure you do this correctly. But ultimately, the purpose of registering with the state revenue department is because you may have to collect and remit income taxes from that employee. And that's especially going to be true if they're working in a state that has an income tax. Now, if you hire someone in a state that doesn't have an income tax, you may not have to do that registration, but that's something to check on. But even if they don't have a state income tax, you likely still are going to need to register with the state labor department, or it might be called something different like the Workforce Commission. But essentially that tells them that you're going to be an employer of someone in that state. Now, if you're wondering how in the world to do all this, don't worry, I'm going to give you some resources coming up here really soon to make sure that you can do this easily and you don't miss anything. And the reason you want to do this up front is that that's going to create the legal foundation for hiring your employee, so do not skip these steps. Okay, now on to step 3, you're going to pick your payroll system. You do not want to run payroll manually. Trust me on this. There is lots of great technology out there these days that can handle all the forms and the withholding and the remitting to the states, and you don't have to worry about it. So why would you add that onto your plate? Now, when you're looking for a system, you want to make sure you can find one that can do all of these things, including pay your employee, withhold any federal and state income taxes, withhold payroll taxes, withhold and remit unemployment taxes, handle all of those different tax forms and filings like your 941s, your W-2s, and also make sure to track everything accurately. Now, on the plus side, there are some great affordable systems that will do all of this for you. And one of them that I recommend highly for your first employee and beyond is OnPay, because it was built specifically with true small business owners in mind. It's intuitive even for somebody who has never hired an employee before, and it walks you through each step so that you do not miss a thing. Not only does it help you hire your employee, but it also helps you with things like onboarding your employees, offering benefits, and staying compliant with all the rules and regulations and all those forms you need to file. And they offer live support, which is a huge plus when you are hiring your first employee and trying to figure this all out for the first time. If you're interested in learning more about OnPay, of course, I have a link, jamietrull.com/OnPay, and that link is going to get you a $100 referral bonus for signing up with my partner link. So definitely make sure to use that if you decide to sign up. Okay, on to step 4, which is to complete those new hire forms. Once your employee has accepted the job, that's when the process comes to start with the new hire forms. Now, a lot of this you can even do before the first day of employment, especially if you're using something like OnPay. It can actually send many of these forms over to the employee to complete themselves, or you can do it on their behalf. So the forms we're talking about are things like a W-4, which determines their tax withholding, a form like an I-9, which is going to make sure that they're eligible for employment. They're going to be able to fill out their direct deposit information if that's something that they desire. And I highly recommend paying by direct deposit. It's much easier on you. And a lot of times you can even send internal documents like a handbook or something like that that they need to hire via your payroll provider. And that's another area where choosing the right payroll provider can really help. For example, OnPay, for one, allows you to create custom onboarding packets for your new hires, assign forms that they can go ahead and sign themselves, and collect those e-signatures to make it super painless on both sides. All right, so we're already to step 5, which is finally to add the new employee to payroll. Now, this is where we're going to come back to registering your employee in the state, because it's going to come back up when you start to put them into your payroll system. So you're going to want to make sure you have fully registered as an employer in the state that you're hiring your employee. And again, OnPay can absolutely help you with this. They'll make sure to let you know if you're missing any numbers, for example, and if they need anything from you to file all the required reports. So remember, that usually means registering in 2 different places, with the Department of Revenue in the state that you're hiring, and that's so that you can actually withhold those state income taxes and you know how much to withhold, and you can remit them back to the state. But like I said, if the state you're hiring in doesn't have an income tax like Texas or Florida or where I live in Tennessee, then you might get out of this step, but I would go ahead and just check to make sure. However, no matter where you are hiring an employee, you are probably going to have to register with the State Department of Labor, might be called the Workforce Commission. There are various different names that this may have, but it's essentially the department of the state that manages the labor force. And the reason that you do that is to comply with state unemployment insurance requirements, also called SUTA. And that is one of the main things that you're going to need to have to employ someone in a state. And it also makes sure that you're complying with state level requirements and reporting. So they need to know that you're employing someone in the state to make sure that if there are other forms and things that need to be filed, that they know you have an employee in the state. Now, once registered, you're going to get an account number from each of these different departments, and there will be a place in your payroll under that employee to put those numbers. So like I said, OnPay will remind you if you don't have those numbers that are required, and it really becomes a bigger issue towards the end of a quarter, because in order to file, say, the Q1 941s that are typically filed by the end of April, you would need to have those numbers in there so that they could remit that back to the taxing authority. Now, sometimes it can take a little while to get those. Sometimes it's instantaneous. When you fill out an online form, you'll get an employer number. And sometimes, like when I did this for the first time in the state of Tennessee, it took literal weeks in order to get that number. And the good thing is that you don't necessarily have to wait to pay your employee until you have that number. Again, a payroll system, specifically like OnPay, is probably going to let you pay them, but you want one that's going to remind you not to forget that number, because you don't want to get to the end of the year and realize that you never paid any of your state unemployment insurance and you never withheld state taxes from their paychecks. So then you're going to make sure that you have added them to payroll. You're going to put all those employee details. Again, the right payroll software will allow them to enter that if you would like that, where you're entering their general information, their social security number, their address, things like that that need to be on file in order to pay them. This is also, of course, where you put in their pay rate. You want to decide whether they're going to be salary or hourly and how that's going to work for you. And you're also going to want to make sure that you dictate what the pay schedule is going to be. So you can do that in the system as well. Are you going to pay them monthly, twice a month, every other week? How are you going to manage this? And again, make sure to check your state rules and see if there's any requirements for how you need to pay them. And once everything's entered and double checked, you are good to go to run your first payroll. Now, you might think we're done, but we actually have 3 more steps to go, so don't leave yet. Now, in step 6, you're going to report your new hire to the state. Now, most states are going to require that you report your new hire within the first 10 to 20 days. But the great news is, if you're using a payroll software like OnPay, they're going to take care of this for you. So that's just one more thing to check off of your to-do list by using a payroll software. All right, now step 7, and this one's a little bit more advanced, but this is really around assigning benefits. So if you're planning to offer things like health plans, retirement benefits, workers' compensation if it's required, or anything else, this is a good time to determine that. And you're going to want to go ahead and get your employee enrolled and make sure that you're meeting any compliance requirements. Now, the compliance requirements for benefits like this can be really tricky. So having the right payroll provider at your side during this is really key here as well. For example, OnPay has in-house benefits experts that will help you find the right plan for you. And they integrate with top 401k providers and workers' comp providers to make everything easy and seamless. Plus, integrating your workers' comp, retirement, and benefit plans all in one place, like within OnPay, automates so much of the administrative workload and helps keep everything accurate and in sync. And I don't know about you, but managing everything in one place sounds way better than managing everything in a million different places. Now on to the final step, and this is the one I told you that I think is actually really arguably one of the most important steps, maybe the most important step of all. And that is step 8, to make day 1 amazing. We don't want to get lost in all the compliance and miss the human side of hiring. You want to make sure that you're welcoming your new employee. They're feeling like this is the place that they want to be, and they are excited to start their first day of work. So make it easy for them to really assimilate into your culture. So that could be as simple as a small email or a team lunch, or even having a small gift for them on the day that they start their job. Creating a good first impression, even for your very first employee, goes a long way to creating your company culture. So yes, hiring your first employee has a lot of steps. 8, in fact, and lots of sub-steps under that. But with the right plan and tools, it really isn't so bad. And you do not need to do this alone. And actually, you shouldn't do it alone. But you also don't need to hire an accountant to do this for you that's going to charge you hundreds of dollars. You can actually do this with the right payroll system. If you want to check out more about OnPay and how they can make this process much more simple and straightforward for you, then definitely go check out that link below. And remember, you get $100 for signing up with my referral link. I highly, highly recommend OnPay for the ease of use when you are hiring that first employee, and because of the great customer service they have as well to help you through the process. Now, if you've got any questions on this process, make sure to ask them down below, and hopefully I can help. Plus, if you are considering OnPay and you want to see more about them, make sure to click the link for the video that's on the screen now, which is my full walkthrough and review of the OnPay solution. And if you're looking for more content on hiring and onboarding and having employees, then definitely make sure that you subscribe. I actually have a new video coming out in a couple of weeks that's going to talk all about hiring specifically remote employees. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it.